God's advice for family drawn from the parable of the sower. In the quiet village of Bethsaida, nestled among the rolling hills and olive groves, there lived a family full of joy and laughter. Elias, the father, was a hard-working farmer who toiled daily in the fields, providing for his wife, Miriam, and their two children, Hannah and Levi. They had once been close, spending time together in the evenings, sharing meals and laughing around the fire as the stars twinkled above. Their home had been filled with love, like a well-tended garden bursting with life. But as time passed, life grew busier. Elias worked longer in the fields, struggling to meet harvest demands. Buried with maintaining their home, Miriam became weary and distant. Hannah and Levi, once playful and full of energy, withdrew into their worlds, preoccupied with their studies and the pressures of village life. Slowly but surely, the warmth that had once filled their home faded, leaving a feeling of emptiness behind. Elias noticed the change, but felt powerless to stop it. He believed that working harder was the only solution. He reasoned that if he could provide more for his family, perhaps the joy would return. But the more he worked, the further away his family seemed to drift. The house, once filled with love, now felt cold, like a garden neglected and overtaken by weeds. One evening, after a particularly long day in the fields, Elias sat beneath an old olive tree in the village square. His body was tired, but his heart felt even heavier. As he looked up at the fading light of the sunset, he noticed a man sitting nearby, quietly watching the world with a peaceful expression. The man's presence was calming, and Elias felt drawn to him, though he did not know why. Without fully understanding his own need, Elias approached the man. He said, his voice weary,
"Good evening, you seem at peace. I haven't felt that in a long time."
The man turned and smiled gently. He said softly,
"Peace comes from within, but tell me, what burdens you?"
Elias sat beside the man and, without hesitation, began to speak. He told the stranger about his family, the love they once shared, and how it had slowly disappeared. He spoke of his struggles to provide, his long hours in the field, and how distant his wife and children had become. He admitted that the more he worked to care for them, the further they drifted away. The man listened quietly, his eyes full of understanding. When Elias had finished, the man spoke again.
"Your family is like a garden, Elias. Once it flourished under your care, but now it is being overtaken by the thorns of worrying and busyness. Gardens need tending, not just from one person, but all who live within them. Let me tell you a story."
Elias felt warmth in the man's words and listened intently as he began to speak. The man continued,
"There was once a sower. He went out to sow seeds in a field. Some seeds fell on rocky ground, where they couldn't take root and were scorched by the sun. Other seeds fell among thorns, and the thorns grew up and choked them. But some seeds fell on good soil and produced a rich harvest, yielding 30, 60, and even 100-fold."
Elias nodded. He had heard this parable before, but had never understood its deeper meaning. The man continued,
"Your family is that soil. Elias, your home is filled with thorns, distractions, busyness, and worrying. These things choke out love and faith. But if you tend to the soil of your hearts, removing the thorns and nurturing the seeds of compassion, forgiveness, and togetherness, your family will grow strong again.
Elias felt a deep stirring in his heart. He asked,
But how? How can I bring back the love we once had?
You cannot do it alone. It will take time, patience, and faith. But with God's help, you can create an environment where love can thrive again. Start by making time for your family, speak with them, share your heart, and encourage them to do the same. Pray together and trust in God's guidance. The garden of your home will begin to bloom.
Elias felt a deep sense of peace wash over him. The man's words were simple yet profound. He knew he had been given the wisdom to heal his family. With renewed determination, Elias thanked the man and returned home. That evening, Elias gathered Miriam, Hannah, and Levi around the fire. He shared with them the conversation he had with the man in the village and the parable of the sower. He spoke from his heart, admitting how his focus on work had caused him to neglect their time together. With tears in his eyes, he asked for their forgiveness and invited them to begin anew. Miriam, touched by Elias's sincerity, reached for his hand. She said softly,
We have all drifted, but I believe we can find our way back together.
Hannah and Levi, who had been listening quietly, nodded in agreement. Hannah said, her voice full of emotion,
We miss how things used to be, but we can start again.
From that night forward, the family committed to one another. They began to spend more time together, sharing meals, talking openly about their struggles, and praying as a family. Elias returned home earlier from the fields, and Miriam allowed herself moments of rest. Slowly, the love and joy that had once filled their home began to return. Months later, as Elias sat again under the olive tree in the village square, he thought of the man who had shared such wisdom with him. He realized now that the man was no ordinary villager. He was Jesus, who had brought peace to his heart and healing to his home. Their home was no longer a place of sorrow, but had blossomed into a thriving garden full of love, faith, and unity. Through the simple act of tending to their hearts and trusting in God's guidance, they had found the peace they had longed for. The seeds of love had taken root in good soil, and the harvest was bountiful, producing blessings that would last for generations.